Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I want to show you how I use the PreSonus Studio One room reverb when I'm mixing. We're going to be exploring the PreSonus Studio One room reverb. That is the default. It's the reverb that comes with it, the stock plugin here inside of Studio One. But before we dive into that plugin, if you're ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process, step by step, to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a 100% free-to-download guide, and you can download it below by clicking the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and look at this reverb. I'm going to give you 3 ways that I use it inside a mix here or when I'm mixing. The first way is actually the way I use it most often, and that's as a plate reverb on the vocal. You can see I have it delegated as the CLA plate reverb. It's a plate reverb setting that I stole from Chris Lord-Alge from watching all his videos back in the day on Pure Mix or Mix with the Masters. So let me play you the mix here so you can get an idea of what we're working with, and then I'll solo up the vocal so you can hear the reverb that we have going on the vocal, and we can dive into the reverb settings as well. So here's our finished mix for the song. Someday when you come, I won't fall for your love. Someday when you go. You can hear it's a longer plate sound. It's about a 2-second plate reverb. But the key to this one here is that there's a 152 millisecond pre-delay. So it's a 2-second plate reverb, and then if you dial up the pre-delay to about 152 milliseconds, it gives you this nice length after the vocal. And what I like about the plate reverb here inside of Studio One is it's very smooth sounding, and it can give you a lot of nice length without feeling too overly wide or too huge sounding. It's not a very, very big or fake sounding reverb. It feels nice and it sits in the mix really well while giving the vocal some depth and some length. And I usually just follow the plate reverb here with a quick roll off of the low end just to make sure there's not a buildup in the low mids. I don't want any sub or anything pretty much below 200 hertz coming into my vocal reverb. All of those frequencies I want to be coming from the main vocal. I don't want any buildup coming through on the plate reverb here. Let me hit play on the reverb here. I'll pull it up so you can hear it more clearly, and we'll add the vocal in as well there. Someday, when you come, I won't fall, no, I won't fall for your love. Someday. You can hear it's giving our vocal some nice depth. It's giving it a little bit of width, but again, this room reverb's not really, really wide sounding, so it's not something I have to narrow up or mess with the panning on. But the pre-delay on it is very, very smooth, and the decay after it is really, really nice as well. There's nothing harsh about it. You can hear it handles the top end from the vocal really, really well. The S's aren't cutting through. It's nice and smooth on the top end there, and that pre-delay helps to make sure our reverb is sitting after our vocal and not right on top of it. So it's nice to have a pre-delay setting here on a stock reverb inside of a DAW, because then I can dial it to make sure it's coming after our vocal and it's not happening right on top of our vocal to muddy things up at all. So that's the first way I like to use the room reverb. Again, it's just the setting here that I saved, a preset that I created, the CLA plate reverb. Now in Studio One updated, the length and the pre-delay changed here, but it's still giving me the same effect. So if you're looking for something similar to this, to use on your lead vocals, again, it's a 2-second plate reverb and then a 152 millisecond pre-delay. And to start this preset, I just started with the flat plate here. I use this quite often when I'm creating any kind of presets or anything inside the mix. So that's that there. Let me dial it back to where it was inside the mix here, and you can hear it one more time, just on the vocal and inside the mix.
Someday, someday when you go, I'll know how to fight your someday, someday when you go.
Now, probably the use for this reverb that I would use most often next, following the plate reverb there, is probably the studio room reverb, or the medium studio room reverb. So I'm just going to copy this same preset right over. We'll color it white here, and if you'll notice, I like using the bus setting instead of creating an effects channel, because I like to have a send off of my effects as well, and I like to be able to choose if they're mono or stereo. That's why I'm using a bus there instead of an effects channel. Now for the room reverb here, I like to use the medium studio for anything like drums or sometimes guitars, but I'm going to show you here on drums. So we have that same EQ following it now to make sure there's not too much low end or low mid information coming through. And we're going to send from our snare drum here into this room reverb, or the medium studio room here. Let me hit play here, and I'm going to pull this up so we can hear it inside the mix, and we'll solo up the snare or the drums as well. Hear that nice pop of air coming off the reverb. Like I said, the top end on the room reverb here inside of Studio One, just the default stock reverb, has a really smooth top end. So let's take a listen to just our drums here inside the mix with now the room reverb going. There's a little bit of flutter, which is something that I've always struggled with the room reverb inside of Studio One. Using it on drums, I always get that kind of flutter effect. It might be something that you get with a lot of stock plugins or stock reverbs, is you get that kind of flutter sound from it maybe bouncing through the walls there. But you can still hear that nice pop of air that's giving our snare drum. And that kind of flutter echo, or that flutter effect that we're getting on the snare drum, you won't hear even if we throw in just the rest of the drum. So that kind of thing gets absorbed inside of the mix. So it's not too big of an issue here. One more time, we'll dial it back in here with the snare, then the drums, and then the entire mix. So we've got two uses here now for the room reverb. We got the CLA plate verb going on the lead vocal, and then we have the medium studio verb going on our snare drum. And we could easily throw that on all the toms if we needed as well. The last way that I like using the room reverb when I'm mixing is for anything like organ, or if there's kind of guitar effect loops going, or lead guitar that needs something. I like using the flat plate verb and dialing it up. If I can spell correctly. We're going to color this channel white. Again, we're using a bus channel. Send it into the mix bus. Solo safing the reverb. That way when you solo the source that the reverb is sending from, it'll solo the reverb as well. And if you don't know how to do that, just shift click and you'll get that green color on the solo button. That means it's solo saved. We're going to copy, actually, I think I have it saved here in one of the inserts. Right here, flat plate verb. This here is actually just the flat plate setting here from the room reverb. If you click on the flat plate preset and then dial it up to about 6 seconds, so a really, really long plate reverb here, this is the preset I'm using. Then we're coming over here, same EQ, rolling off the low end. Now this flat plate verb here that's this long is something I believe I grabbed from Joe Gilder's videos back in the day, using it on background vocals. And I like to throw it on, like I said, organ or lead guitars or anything like that as well. But we'll start by throwing it on the background vocals here. So if we solo with the background vocals, I'll pull off the reverb that's on them and we'll switch it over. That's one of the reasons I love using this reverb on background vocals. It's instantly beautiful and it instantly makes your background vocals feel huge, and they're just this massive, beautiful force inside the mix. So I'm going to level it out a little bit and then we'll throw it inside the mix. By having the reverb this long at that 6-second flat plate reverb, it helps to blend background vocals together as they're holding like long ahs or long oohs like that. Because the decay is so long, as one note's going and one note comes in, they all blend together and it helps you create one stack of background vocals instead of hearing all of the individual parts kind of loosely by themselves. So it's a nice reverb to blend a bunch of things together like that, give them a massive sound. The other thing we'll try it on is we'll try it on the lead guitar here at the end. So you can see there's another mix verb on it here. We'll take the mix verb off. We'll take the flat plate off of background vocals here, and we'll move it over to our lead guitar. So here's just our lead guitar with the flat plate now. Gives you that big cascading solo sound that was probably made famous by like David Gilmour, that kind of Pink Floyd, Comfortably Numb sound where it's this huge cascade making the guitar sound like it's playing, just blasting through an arena. That's why I like that flat plate reverb. Gives you a really, really huge sound. So we have 3 uses for the default, the stock reverb here inside of Studio One, the room reverb. One is the flat plate reverb, using it in the CLA setting on a lead vocal. Number 2 is the medium studio reverb, and number 3 is the flat plate. So one more time here, we'll do all 3 of them going into our outro here. So on our background vocals, got the flat plate there, and then we'll throw it in on our lead guitar as well here. So we'll take back off these mix verbs. You can hear all 3 at work now. So we've got it on the lead vocals, we've got it on the snare drum, we've got it on our background vocals, as well as our lead guitar. So here's this pass going into the final solo. So if you're struggling to find a reverb that you like, give the room reverb in Studio One, the stock reverb, another shot here. Using it on vocals here at the CLA plate reverb, using it on drums, literally just grabbing the medium studio reverb here and dialing it up volume-wise. And then the flat plate reverb, just grabbing the flat plate setting, dialing the length up to give it this long sound, and throwing it in on background vocals and lead guitar. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.